The rap world has been shaken to its core, and tonight, we're bringing you the inside story that has fans talking non-stop. Fat Joe and Jadakiss, two of hip-hop's most respected voices, have finally spoken out. And what they revealed will leave the streets and the internet reeling. For years, whispers about snitching, betrayal, and shifting loyalties have circulated, but no one has dared to speak as bluntly or as openly as they have. Until now, Tekashi 6ix9ine, the name that alone can ignite chaos across the hip-hop community, finds himself at the center of a storm more intense than ever. But this isn't just another rap beef. This is a story of lines crossed, trust shattered, and a culture grappling with what has suddenly become acceptable in the industry. Fat Joe and Jadakiss are pulling back the curtain, exposing not just one rapper, but an entire system of deceit, manipulation, and double-dealing that has many fans questioning who they can really trust. Tonight, we dive deep into every jaw-dropping statement, every shocking allegation, and every reaction that has the rap world buzzing. This isn't just gossip, it's a raw, unfiltered look at the battles, the betrayals, and the principles at stake. By the end of this video, you'll see the drama from a perspective no one else is showing, and you'll understand why this revelation is shaking hip-hop from the ground up. Buckle up, this is one conversation, one scandal, and one explosive revelation that you cannot afford to miss. The night started like any other in the glittering world of hip-hop. Flashing cameras, flashing lights, and whispers that moved faster than the music itself. But inside one of the most talked-about studios in the city, something extraordinary was about to unfold. Fat Joe and Jadakiss, two titans, whose reputations were forged through decades of lyricism, street credibility, and battles on the mic, had decided to finally speak out, and they weren't holding back. Rumors had circulated for years about betrayal, snitching, and the erosion of trust within the rap community, but no one had dared to address it head-on. Tonight, that silence would shatter. As the two men entered the room, there was a palpable tension and energy that could be felt by anyone standing close enough. The walls themselves seemed to hum with anticipation, carrying the weight of history, loyalty, and the unspoken truths that had lingered far too long. Tekashi 6ix9ine's name hung in the air like a lightning rod. Over the past several years, his career had been defined by chaos, controversy, and the very thing that now had the industry buzzing. He had become a symbol, for better or worse, of the lines that some rappers were willing to cross for fame, fortune, or survival. And now, Fat Joe and Jadakiss were ready to confront the ripple effects of his actions, not physically, but with words that cut just as deep. As the cameras rolled and the first microphones were adjusted, Joe leaned forward. "The thing people don't understand," he began, voice low but unwavering, "is that this isn't just about one man. It's bigger than that. It's about the culture, the streets, and the respect that's being lost one betrayal at a time." Jadakiss nodded solemnly, his expression unreadable but intense. "We've seen it happen before, but this time, it's on another level. The things that were once unacceptable are suddenly becoming tolerated, and that changes everything." The room seemed to hold its breath. Every word they spoke echoed, carrying the weight of years of observation, frustration, and unspoken disappointment. For fans and insiders alike, it was a revelation, not because it was news that someone had crossed lines before, but because these two legends, voices of reason in a world often dominated by chaos, were publicly calling it out. The discussion turned more specific, zeroing in on instances, behaviors, and patterns. Names were mentioned carefully, scenarios laid bare, and the consequences of actions analyzed. Fat Joe recounted moments where loyalty was tested, where promises were broken, and where the foundation of trust had been eroded. Jadakiss added perspective, noting how this shift in behavior wasn't just about one individual. It reflected a broader acceptance of betrayal as part of the game. Fans watching at home could feel the gravity of the statements. Every pause, every glance, every carefully chosen word spoke volumes. This wasn't just commentary, it was a reckoning. The industry's unofficial rules, once sacred and untouchable, were being challenged, questioned, and exposed for all to see. And then came the moment that would ignite the internet. Joe leaned back, shaking his head slowly. "Look, it's not about hate, it's about clarity. If we don't speak up, if we don't set the record straight, the next generation won't even know what respect looks like. They'll just follow the chaos," Jadakiss added, almost under his breath, but loud enough to resonate with everyone listening. And that's the dangerous part. Once respect is gone, what's left? Reputation? Followers? Likes? That's not hip-hop. That's theater. The camera crews captured every reaction. The silent nods, the subtle grimaces, the faces of those present who understood the gravity of what was being said. Outside, fans speculated, tweets flew, and social media exploded. But inside the room, it was quieter, more intense. This was a moment of truth, not spectacle. As the discussion continued, they shifted focus to the larger implications. How would the culture respond? What message would this send to upcoming artists? Could the industry survive if betrayal became normalized? Every statement, every reflection was layered with history, experience, and an unspoken warning. And yet, amidst the tension, there was clarity. Fat Joe and Jadakiss weren't just exposing scandal, they were offering insight, a roadmap, a call to recognize the line between ambition and integrity. The conversation was dense, unfiltered, and real. Fans didn't just witness gossip. They were watching two legends dismantle misconceptions and illuminate truths. By the end of the first session, the energy in the room had shifted. What began as tension and anticipation had transformed into reflection and understanding. The words spoken would ripple through the industry, social media, and fan communities alike. Everyone present knew they had seen something significant. A confrontation not of fists, but of principles and conscience. As the cameras were turned off and the room emptied slowly, the air still held the residue of what had happened. Whispers would turn into headlines, clips would spread across platforms, and the names of Fat Joe, Jadakiss, and Tekashi 6ix9ine would dominate conversations for weeks to come. But inside the room, the two legends walked away knowing that they had done more than comment. They had set a standard, issued a warning, and revealed truths that could no longer be ignored. The night ended, but the storm had just begun. The culture, the fans, and the industry itself would never be the same after this conversation. And for anyone paying attention, the message was clear. Respect, loyalty, and honesty in hip-hop were priceless. And the cost of losing them was far greater than anyone had imagined. The storm Fat Joe and Jadakiss had unleashed in Part 1 was only beginning to show its teeth. The social media world exploded overnight. Clips, reactions, and heated debates dominated feeds. Fans were divided, hashtags were trending, and even casual listeners couldn't ignore the tension. But inside the studio, the atmosphere was far from calm. As the morning sun hit the city, the two legends returned to continue the conversation. Today, the stakes were higher. Not just about exposing betrayal or calling out snitching today, was about examining the ripple effects and holding the culture accountable. Every word spoken could ignite yet another chain reaction. The moment the cameras went live, Joe didn't waste a second. "Let's be clear," he said, voice sharp, unwavering. "This isn't personal. It's about the principle. When you normalize snitching, when loyalty becomes optional, the game dies. And we're standing here to make sure people know what's at stake." Jadakiss leaned in, voice calm, but heavy with intensity. "People need to see the bigger picture. It's not just Tekashi 6ix9ine is a symptom, not the disease. The problem is the system, the culture that rewards betrayal. That's the dangerous part. And it's time we confront it head on." Every statement seemed to hit harder than the last. Clips of their conversation had already spread online, causing waves of reactions from rappers, influencers, and fans. Messages poured in, some supporting, some condemning, some demanding answers. The heat was rising, and Fat Joe and Jadakiss knew that the next words could either calm the storm or ignite an even bigger explosion. Then came the first confrontation. A rising star known for controversial behavior attempted to defend what many saw as betrayal. "It's just the game," they said, voice defensive. "If you don't snitch, you're risking everything." Fat Joe paused, eyes narrowing. "No. That's the excuse of the weak. Loyalty and respect have always been the foundation of this culture. If you forget that, you've lost before you even started," Jadakiss added, his voice cold and deliberate. "And don't tell us it's about survival. Survival without integrity is just chaos. We're here to remind everyone that there's a line and it can't be crossed without consequences. The exchange was intense. Every word is cut like a knife. Cameras caught the facial expressions, the disbelief, the shame, the fleeting moments of reflection. This was more than commentary. It was accountability in motion. The rising star couldn't respond. They realized the weight of history standing against them. Meanwhile, the online world went berserk. Fans created memes. Commentators dissected every phrase. And rappers quietly watched, understanding that the conversation would shape reputations for months. The energy in the streets mirrored the tension on screen, everyone waiting to see who would respond next as the discussion continued. Joe and Jadakiss dug deeper, exposing scenarios that had never been talked about publicly. Contracts, collaborations, and betrayals were analyzed with surgical precision. What looked like petty disputes to outsiders were revealed as calculated moves with deep consequences. The audience was captivated, watching an insider's perspective on how trust was broken and reputations tarnished. Then came the turning point. Joe dropped a revelation that caused a collective gasp in the room. Some of the biggest names in this industry have benefited from betrayal, and most of the fans don't even realize it. They cheer the chaos, glorify the disloyal, and wonder why the culture feels hollow. Jadakiss leaned forward, almost whispering, but cameras captured every word. "It's time people understand fame doesn't excuse dishonesty. Recognition doesn't justify betrayal. And those who ignore this will one day face the consequences whether they realize it or not. The tension reached its peak when the conversation turned personal. Memories of past beefs, near betrayals, and near-fatal mistakes surfaced. Both Joe and Jadakiss recounted experiences where trust had been tested in the harshest ways imaginable. For viewers, it was a revelation, lessons from the legends themselves, a rare glimpse behind the scenes and proof that even giants face betrayal and must navigate treacherous waters. And then, unexpectedly, a reconciliation began to unfold. Some of the younger rappers, initially defensive, started acknowledging the truth in their words. The camera captured subtle nods, murmured agreements, and a realization that perhaps loyalty and integrity weren't outdated ideals after all. The discussion concluded with a warning. The culture was at a crossroads. Continue down the path of normalized betrayal, and hip-hop would lose more than just its legends, it would lose its soul. Respect, honor, and loyalty weren't just words. They were the pillars holding the industry together, and those pillars were now being tested like never before. As the studio emptied, the impact of the conversation lingered. Clips from the discussion flooded social media, trending across platforms. Fans debated, artists reflected, and the streets buzzed with newfound awareness. Fat Joe and Jadakiss had not just commented, they had sparked a movement, forced a reflection, and reminded the world that in hip-hop, loyalty still mattered. The storm had intensified, the public reactions, confrontations, and the ultimate reckoning. For viewers, the question remained, who would rise, who would fall, and who would finally pay for the betrayal that had shaken the rap world to its core? The storm that Fat Joe and Jadakiss had ignited was no longer contained within studio walls. Had spilled into the streets, social media feeds, and every corner of hip-hop. Fans were debating endlessly. Rappers were watching closely, and every comment, clip, and reaction carried weight. The drama had reached its peak, and the world was ready for the fallout. As the cameras turned on for part 3, Joe and Jadakiss didn't waste a second. The energy in the room was electric, tense, charged, and unpredictable. "This isn't just about calling someone out anymore," Joe began, his voice sharp, commanding attention. "It's about showing the consequences when loyalty is ignored and trust is shattered. People need to understand the cost." Jadakiss leaned in, eyes narrowing. "We've seen the aftermath. Careers disrupted, friendships broken, and fans confused about what's right and wrong. Tonight, we're clearing the air and no one gets a free pass." The discussion turned directly toward Tekashi 6ix9ine. Clips and evidence of past betrayals were reviewed, analyzed, and contextualized. The camera panned over every reaction, the disbelief, the shock, the realization that some actions, once dismissed, had far-reaching consequences. For the audience, it was jaw. For the artists involved, it was accountability in real time. The intensity escalated when unexpected voices joined the conversation. Rising stars, insiders, and even some veterans of the game weighed in, acknowledging the truth in Joe and Jadakiss's words. Some tried to defend themselves, claiming it's just the game. But Joe's response was immediate and cutting. "The game isn't just about surviving, it's about respect. If you lose that, nothing else matters," Jadakiss added almost grimly. "And those who cross the line without facing consequences will learn the hard way. We're here to make sure the culture doesn't forget its roots." The climax came when a leaked message surfaced, one that many insiders had suspected, but no one had confirmed publicly. Proof of alliances broken, deals sabotaged, and loyalty traded for personal gain. Joe held up the message on camera, voice firm. "This is the reality. This is what happens when principles are thrown out the window. And it's not just about one rapper, it's about the whole system." Jadakiss turned to the camera, voice resolute. "And let this be a lesson. Fame, money, clout, these things don't excuse betrayal. Respect doesn't have a price. If we let this slide, we lose the very essence of hip-hop." The reactions were immediate. Clips from the session went viral within hours, trending across Twitter, Instagram, and TikTok. Fans created debates, rap forums exploded, and commentators dissected every phrase, every glance, every statement. Artists who had previously stayed silent now felt the pressure. Some reached out privately. Others publicly acknowledged the truths revealed. And then came the final confrontation, a moment that no one expected. A prominent figure, once considered untouchable, addressed the accusations indirectly but powerfully. Their acknowledgments sent shockwaves through the industry, confirming the legitimacy of Joe and Jadakiss's claims. The ripple effect was massive. Collaborations were reconsidered, alliances reevaluated, and fans started rethinking their heroes. But amid the chaos, one message was clear. The culture had been reminded of its core values. Loyalty, respect, and integrity weren't outdated. They were non-negotiable. Fat Joe and Jadakiss had not just exposed scandal, they had reshaped the conversation, forced reflection, and reminded everyone why hip-hop had always been more than just music. It was a way of life. As the session wrapped up, the final words resonated like a verdict. Joe leaned back, eyes steady. We've spoken. The evidence is out. The culture decides what comes next, but never forget actions have consequences, Jadakiss added, his voice carrying finality. And this isn't just about punishment, it's about awareness. It's about teaching the next generation what's worth standing for and what's not worth crossing. By the time the cameras stopped rolling, the world had already reacted. Headlines screamed, fans debated, and the streets buzzed with energy. For viewers, this wasn't just another rap story, it was a revelation, a reckoning, and a reminder that hip-hop's foundation was more than fame, money, or clout. It was about loyalty, integrity, and respect those pillars had just been defended by two of the greatest voices the culture had ever known. The saga didn't end with the cameras off. Clips circulated endlessly, comments flooded in, and discussions carried over into every social media platform imaginable. For Fat Joe and Jadakiss, it wasn't about attention, it was about impact. And for the fans, it was a lesson that would linger long after the videos were uploaded in hip-hop. Respect isn't given, it's earned, protected, and never to be betrayed. The storm had reached its peak, the public reckoning and the truth the rap world couldn't ignore. And while the drama would continue, one thing was clear. Loyalty and integrity had just been put back on the map, and everyone watching knew that the culture had changed forever. If you thought the drama stopped with just one revelation, think again. Fat Joe and Jadakiss have dropped truths that the rap world couldn't ignore, and now it's your turn to weigh in. What do you think about the snitching scandal? How far is too far when it comes to loyalty in hip-hop? Fans all over the world are debating, sharing clips, and reacting in real time. But we want to hear from you. Smash that like button if you were shocked by what Joe and Jadakiss revealed. Hit subscribe and turn on the notification bell so you never miss the explosive updates, insider secrets, and behind-the-scenes stories that we bring you every single day. This is more than entertainment. It's an unfiltered look at the real struggles, betrayals, and drama that shape the culture you love. Drop your thoughts in the comments below. Who do you think was in the wrong? Could Tekashi 6ix9ine have done things differently? Should loyalty still be the #1 rule in hip-hop? Or has the game changed forever? Your opinion matters, and we read every single comment. And don't forget to share this video with friends, fellow fans, and anyone who lives for the chaos and the stories behind the headlines. The rap world is watching, the fans are talking, and the drama is just getting started. Join the conversation, stay connected, and witness every shocking revelation as it unfolds.